In Buddhist tradition, the 5 precepts are generally intended to guide us. You can say the guideline, voluntary training rules, not something somebody forced you to do. So you chose to take the training rules. You can say guiding principles in your life. And also it's important or even crucial to understand exactly how these precepts or the commitments work different from other concepts you might be familiar with in other religions or traditions. Something like very different from the concept of absolute, unbreakable commitments or commandment in many other traditions. So it's important to know how Buddhism views these things, how the commitment to the 5 precepts functions in our own practice, day-to-day basis practice, and the lifelong journey, and the significance of formally receiving the precept, what that means, and what these precepts entail, and so forth. So let's get started. As I said, it's important to understand a little bit. I'm sure you know the significance of this moment, receiving the 5 precepts, what receiving the 5 precepts entails. Therefore, you are here, I'm sure, to some extent. And so I just want to re-emphasize what the understanding from the Buddhist perspective. This is not a commandment, but a guiding rule, or maybe guiding advice or guiding ruler, to measure your life based on this. This is a foundational and a deeply significant event in Buddhist practice. That's one thing. And as I said, not the divine mandates or the commandment directed by somebody or even teacher or the creator God. Not like that. It's not like their law forced by external entity or religious authority, right? You registered it, you pushed the button, and you showed up here voluntarily, right? This is a voluntary training rules that the practitioner formally undertakes to cultivate an ethical, mindful, and harmonious life. Don't you think we want to live a life like that? So this is a guiding rules, and we are so fortunate to participate in this journey this way together. And the guiding principles, as I was saying, they serve as a lifelong North Star for behavior, designed to help an individual avoid creating suffering for ourselves and others. In other words, bad karmas. In our life, we have to make a lot of choices, right? At that moment, if we have this guiding rule, then based on that, comfortably or joyfully, we can make choice. We don't get too much confusions. Of course, life is so complicated, but if we have this guiding rule, guiding star, we can relax in a way. Then this is a gradual perfection. We are not aiming for the perfection right now at this moment. Buddhism recognizes that the human beings are flawed. We have a lot of flaws, and the precepts are the long life practice of striving toward ethical perfection. None of us are perfect at this moment in terms of ethical behavior and so forth, but then we can make effort. We can strive toward perfecting this lifelong purpose, rather than expectation of immediate flawless execution. It's not something like that, okay, I received the 5 precepts today, so now I'm all perfect. I don't need to do anything. No, we have to make an effort to perfect or enrich or to nurture that promise. So then usually this receiving the 5 precepts goes with or along with or paired with taking refuge in the triple jump, which I will do today. But now I want to list up before we jump in, maybe overlap what I just said, but the significance of the commitment. These are the 5 I listed. First one is, as I said, the foundation of the path. So in the Buddhist framework, there are many ways to cut the pie, so to speak. Buddhism divided into 3 baskets or 3 categories, you can say. First one is ethics. Sila. Second is samadhi, mental discipline. Then third is wisdom, prajna. This first one, Sila, this is the basis of all this meditation and wisdom. So you can say the 5 precepts form the bedrock of Sila, ethical conduct. In other words, without the foundation of ethical behavior, the mind remains agitated by guilt, conflict, and desire. As we all know, attaining shamatha, forget about that. Then there's no wisdom does not unfold. So making deeper spiritual progress impossible. So this is the foundation. Number one importance is the foundation of the path. Then second is the protection of the self and others, as I was talking about. The precepts are often described as a gift, great gift of safety. We can give a gift of safety to ourselves and others by committing to harmlessness intentionally. The practitioner offers the gift of fearlessness to all living beings. This is very important. So outwardly, it ensures that the practitioner is a safe, trustworthy, and peaceful presence in their community. Have you seen those monks or great lamas who really living the 5 precepts? So comfortable being with them. We can completely feel safe and they are trustworthy. I'm sure you have that experience. Now you become like them by taking the 5 precepts and living in the 5 precepts. Then inwardly, it protects the practitioners, us, from the psychological suffering, such as regret, guilt, paranoia, and anxiety. All these modern diseases can be avoided by doing this, committing, internally protect. So naturally arise from unethical behavior, right? When we are living in unethically, all these psychological sufferings, outcome of that. That's number 2, the protection for self and others. Then number 3 could be the prerequisite for meditation and mindfulness. A couple of weeks ago, we went over the prerequisite for the shamatha. We have to have a condition for the shamatha to dawn or arise or cultivate it. Then one of the big things is the ethical behavior. The mind crowded by the consequences of harmful actions or the dullness of intoxicants cannot achieve the stillness required for deep meditation, right? So receiving and observing the 5 precepts clears the psychological debris, you can say, that distracts the mind. Then creating the mental clarity necessary to observe the nature of mind, nature of reality as it is, and ultimately cultivate liberating wisdom, prajna. So basis of prajna. That's number 3, prerequisite for meditation and mindfulness, and wisdom. Now, these are very familiar, I think, generating a positive karma. Most of us came here to cultivate or accumulate more positive karma by practicing or intentional action. We can say that this is karma. Karma is an intentional action, shapes our present and future experiences, right? We heard about that. And also as we grow older, we experience the truth of that in our lives. Anyway, by formally receiving the precept, the practitioner makes a strong conscious intention to act wholeheartedly, wholesomely. Even when a practitioner is simply sitting quietly, not doing much, not actively doing anything, the ongoing commitment to the precept continues to generate positive karma, not harming others, for example, because they actively sustain their vows of non-harm. You know what I mean? Of course, as a human being, a good human citizen, we want to bring peace to the world. We try not to harm others. But by taking the precept intentionally this way, we can accumulate tremendous karma, virtuous collections this way. That's one thing. Even while we are sleeping, unconsciously, we are accumulating positive karma. Anyway, that's number 4, generating positive karma. Then, of course, last one, not least, that compass for daily life. This is a quote from the text. The precepts are the mind enclosure, the fortress against unwholesome deed. Taking the precept formally from a teacher or preceptors provide a psychological anchor when faced with difficult decisions, as I was talking about, or temptations. In our life, so many temptations, right, to jump into unethical behavior. But the formal vow serves as a clear guiding boundary, so we can relax it. So it shifts ethical behavior from a vague, abstract concept into a concrete daily practice. So we don't have many questions. Each time something happens, you don't need to ask, because you already have a compass or anchor in you by receiving the 5 precepts. Of course, ultimately receiving the 5 precepts is significant because it is a public and a personal decision or declaration of responsibility. Your responsibility. Nobody forcing you to do that. Your own choice. It signifies a transition from living reactively. Most of us are living reactively. Whatever happens, we react without any anchor. By taking or receiving this guiding boundary or guiding rules, then it shifts the ethical behavior from a vague, abstract concept to the actual concrete day-to-day basis practice. Living intentionally, guiding by compassion and awareness. Is it nice? Yeah, it's difficult, but whenever we have this kind of occasion, we intentionally jump in. How fortunate, with gratitude and rejoicing. I don't know, nowadays not many occasions. Theravada's tradition very popular, and the Vajrayana and masters, of course, gives 5 precepts, but now, especially online community like this, very rare. So I was so happy when I was asked to offer this one. I myself received so many times. Each time I recommit. It's so important to take again. Refuge, same thing. So this is the time. Okay, and also very auspicious time to take this Choko Dujian. Okay, so what are the 5 precepts? You already read about that. So when a practitioner receives the 5 precepts, they recite a vow to undertake the training to refrain from. So refrain from, some are called conducting this. What the refraining from? Taking life, not to killing any sentient beings. Of course, we need a whole maybe session about all the fine lines of each commitment, each precept, but we just go over those 5 things very briefly. Then taking what is not given, in other words, not stealing or exploiting others. Third is sexual misconduct, avoiding sexual behavior that causes harm or exploit others. Of course, it depends on teachers. Explain this, what that entails, sexual misconduct. But in general, sexual misconduct is sexual behavior that causes harm others. Then false speech, which means lying, refraining from lying, or deceiving, or causing malicious languages. Those things. Then last one is intoxicants. Yeah, avoiding substances that crowd the mind and lead to carelessness. I'm not going to comment on more than this at this point, but those are the 5 precepts. In terms of Tibetan tradition, we have flexibilities. Sometimes we receive the 5 precepts in a certain period of time, even one day. Okay, this special occasion, we decide in our mind whether we can do the 5. Or in general, lifelong, until we die. We receive, same as the refuge vows. Once we die, those are dissolved. But then during that time, we break, right? I mean, we try not to, but we break. Then retake again and again. Then what happens if the precept is broken? You want to know? So because they are lifelong or lifetime training mechanism, breaking a precept does not mean a commitment is completely disappeared, or that the practitioner is expelled from the religion or from community. Okay, you broke, so you are now out, or nothing like that. So mindful reflection is very important when that happened. If a precept is broken, honestly, the practitioner is encouraged to acknowledge the mistake mindfully without excessive guilt or self-loathing. That's the same as the purification, right? That's one of the ways to purify the negative action. So this mindful reflection is important, number one. Then recommit. The standard practice is to simply reflect on the unskillful action, simply admit, oh, I've done that. It was wrong, I did this. Then understand the negative consequences it caused. And formally or informally take the precept again to renew the commitment. And also purification practice, like a Vajrasattva purification practice and so forth are very useful. In Buddhism, there are so many skillful means to mend those things. The consequence of breaking a precept is simply the natural law of karma. Action has consequences rather than divine punishment. Yeah, very different concepts, right? Somebody, external beings or external God or authority, they punish you. Not like that. This is a simple consequent, cause and effect. So we just use these skillful means to clean up to the best of our ability.